Could Ant-Man defeat Thanos by flying into his butt?
Dread it, run from it, the memes still arrive all the same, and now they are here, or should I say, science is here. The Avengers have proven they are willing to do whatever it takes to save the universe. So, could Ant-Man defeat Thanos by flying into his butt? Yeah, we're doing it. You did this to me. Alright, so it's time to ask the cheeky questions. There's been a meme going around for months now that the easiest way to defeat Thanos in Avengers Endgame is for Ant-Man to fly up into Thanos' butt, expand to Giant Man size, and then I guess explode him from the inside out. The idea is gaining so much traction that people are actually asking Paul Rudd about it, and surely he has more promotional things to do. So in the grand tradition of this program, let's take this ridiculous situation absolutely seriously and try to figure out what would really happen in a battle between Scott Lang and Intest Titan. Come on, it's pretty good. First, obviously, having someone or something enter your body and then expand to human size or greater and explode you would be an absolutely horrible way to die. But Thanos does not have to explode for this Ant-Man move to kill him. If Ant-Man really entered Thanos' colon, I told you we were gonna take this absolutely seriously, then all he would have to do is perforate the bowel tissue or tear through it. Bowel perforation is an extremely serious injury, and that's because many different species of bacteria live inside your guts alongside of you, doing beneficial, sometimes harmful, and sometimes neutral things. But if they get out into your surrounding body tissues, they can cause deadly infections. The mortality rate from this kind of injury is somewhere between, according to the literature, 11 and 81%. So if Ant-Man just perforated the colon tissue, that might be enough to defeat Thanos. Our next question is then, can Ant-Man get into Angry Grimace's butt? This is an easy one. If Ant-Man can access with his suit the so-called quantum realm, which is the universe on the very smallest scales, he should be able to easily move between the spaces of, say, clothing fibers on the millimeter scale and even skin cells of organisms on the micrometer scale. The Ant-Man suit has allowed the user to pass in between the metal atoms of a missile's casing. So I think Ant-Man could surely get into that. Alright, so now Ant-Man is inside Thanos' butt. Now what? If we think about this question more deeply, because I guess we have to now because internet, it can't be as simple as Ant-Man just expanding and that's it for Thanos. And that's because when Ant-Man is usually expanding, he's only pressing outwardly on the air around him. And we can do that right now. Air isn't very heavy, and so it doesn't provide much resistance to outward motion. This is Titan colon. Surely, Titan colon from an alien, super strong, supervillain, ultimate being person must provide more resistive force to the expansion of Ant-Man than air would. How strong, though, is Purple Butt? These are the questions we must answer. Now we have to approximate just how strong Thanos' colon is and how hard Ant-Man can push on it to complete this analysis. What a quantum mechanically powered thief can do to a reality-wielding alien's butt is an extremely complicated question, but I think that we can still roughly approximate what's going on. Imagine that we have a section of the colon in question here that Ant-Man will be expanding in. What we really want to know is what will the forces and the stresses be as Ant-Man expands in this colon tissue, and will that stress overcome the so-called ultimate tensile strength of this tissue? We are doing very important butt science here, so of course, as you know, we will be using the Young-Laplace equation for estimating the hoop stress created by the pressure in a cylindrical pressure vessel with thin walls, with the colon being the pressure vessel and Ant-Man supplying the pressure. Duh. If you look at the equation, the tensile forces involved, what we're looking for on the colon tissue, will be dependent on the pressure that we have to find for Ant-Man, what he's pressing on with, the radius of the colon and the thickness of the colon's walls. We will get back to this equation once we have all of the numbers that we need to compare to the ultimate tensile strength of colon tissue. One interesting thing to note while we're here is that according to these equations, it is much easier to inflate a section that is spherical than it is to inflate a section that is cylindrical, which is why it's much harder to inflate a balloon at the beginning, and it gets easier as it gets, bigger. If the tension created in the walls of Thanos' colon by Ant-Man's expansion exceed the ultimate tensile strength of colon tissue, then obviously the colon will rupture and this Ant-Man move will work, as per the meme. According to actual scientific studies on the strength of human colon tissue, yep, we found that study. Human colon tissue and its ultimate tensile strength sits somewhere between the ultimate tensile strengths of human muscle and human skin at 0.9 megapascals or 0.9 million newtons per square meter to rupture this colon material. Now, what's important for us is that 0.9 megapascals isn't all that much in the scheme of ultimate tensile strengths. For example, a balloon has more. A balloon's rubber has more. Okay, so now we have an equation to calculate the stress in up past Thanos', and we have the ultimate tensile strength of human colon material, which we can compare to Titan colon material. Now though, we butt up against our biggest problem. How much pressure does Ant-Man push on the surrounding material with when he enlarges? Is it so much that he forces material out of the way, or is it not enough so he just conforms to the surrounding material? This is very important. We have to solve this. Butts depend on it. This is where we have to start making some serious assumptions because the movies aren't very clear on exactly how Scott Lang's powers work. Does Ant-Man actually push on stuff when he enlarges? That makes or breaks this meme, and the movies aren't very clear on this. For example, sometimes Ant-Man is enlarging through the dirt, forcing that dirt out of the way, which is obviously some amount of force. Other times, though, he gets caught expanding inside of a room, like the room itself is keeping him from expanding further, like our Thanos colon might. Other times, whole buildings are expanding with Pym particles, obviously pushing stuff out of the way with some force, but then other times Ant-Man is expanding into a punch like he's providing no force of his own at all. Paul Rudd doesn't even know how to approach this question, and he's Ant-Man.
I don't know.
I surveyed every single shrinking or enlarging of Ant-Man or the Wasp in the entirety of the MCU and found that more often than not, it is implied that enlarging provides some kind of force. Okay, but how much force? I think the best example and most straightforward one might be this, when the Wasp uses her car and Pym particles to launch an SUV. In that scene, the SUV looks like it's launched at around a 45-degree angle and spends a full 2 seconds flying through the air. Now, in that scene, the car specifically is a 2000 GMC Yukon XL. Yes, we must get this specific. If we assume that this car gets a rough parabolic trajectory during this launch, which I think is a reasonable assumption, then we can use the equations for parabolic trajectories to solve for the initial velocity needed to give this car this kind of motion. Then we can plug that initial velocity value into the work energy equation to see just how much force applied over what distance it will take to move the car from zero velocity in the direction of launch to the initial velocity we just calculated for the parabolic. Just a second. Do all of this and we get a force imparted to the SUV from the Wasp's car of a little over 100,000 newtons. Almost done, butt math. The Wasp's car in this scene I checked is a 2010 Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, the dimensions of which you are seeing right now. I think it is a reasonable assumption to think that this force is being applied over every square inch of the roof of the car because that is what is pushing on the SUV. And if you do that, divide the force value by the dimensions of this 2010 Mercedes-Benz Sprinter roof, then you get a pressure value of 2.5 pounds per square inch that Pym particles are allowing that Sprinter to push on the SUV with. Because Ant-Man is using the same Pym particle pushing power, I think that this is our pressure value. Okay, so now we have everything we should need to take this meme way too seriously. So, Ant-Man shrinks. He moves past fabric, past skin cells, and into Thanos' colon. He then enlarges with pin particles with 2.5 pounds of force acting across every square inch of his body and therefore against the colon walls. Using even more butt studies to get a range of dimensions for colon radii and colon thickness, and we get a tension in the walls of Thanos' colon of 0.2 megapascals, or over 4 times less than the ultimate tensile strength of human colon tissue. Now, before we conclude, let's just check our numbers with a different source. According to another butt study from 2016 entitled Rupture of the Sigmoid Colon Caused by Compressed Air, I quote, "The average pressure needed to cause full thickness tearing of the human gastrointestinal tract is 0.29 kilograms per square centimeter." Can you do the conversion in your head? It's okay, I can't. The average PSI needed to rupture the human colon is 4.12, or a full 60% more pounds per square inch than we calculated Ant-Man would be pressing on Thanos' colon with. And so, if our assumptions, estimations, and calculations are reasonable, no, Ant-Man would not be able to just fly into Thanos' colon, expand, and defeat him from the inside out. Thanos' colon would be strong enough to resist the continued expansion of Ant-Man, and so this meme wouldn't work. And this is especially true if Thanos' colon is much stronger than human butt, which surely it must be. This meme now has to be done and dusted. So, could Ant-Man fly into Thanos' butt and expand as a way of finally defeating the Mad Titan? Well, if our assumptions and calculations are close to correct, no, he wouldn't be able to. The movies don't really give any good indications that pin particle expansion comes along with any real amount of force. The most straightforward example that I could find in the films does throw a car, sure, but if you take that force and distribute it across the surface area of Scott Lang's relatively smaller body, it doesn't produce butt-bursting pressures. In reality, if Ant-Man tried this meme, he would be stuck inside Thanos' colon, the size of Thanos' colon. And this surely has to be worse than being stranded in the Soul Stone. Let's turn that into a meme. But 'cause science. Oh, I guess you could say that Ant-Man wouldn't have rectum. You know, I have more butt puns if you want them. Here's another one. I know on the face of it, it sounds maybe a little ridiculous that a human wouldn't be able to enlarge past and get out of something that has a rubbery tensile strength like you wouldn't be able to get out of a balloon. However, look at people actually trying to get out of balloons after they do a dumb internet challenge. You can be easily constrained and trapped inside something that has colon-like properties, so I don't think it's as ridiculous as it seems on its face. Thank you so much for watching, Christina. If you want more of me and you want to suggest ideas for future episodes, please follow us here at these handles on social media. Also, the 4th episode of The Science of Mortal Kombat is now live. We are nearing to a close, and whoa, that last one, hey, we really made that guy get over here, huh? If you haven't seen it, you're gonna wanna check it out. Thanks.